Snatch the plate. Arr, arr. Tell me that's not a socialist manifesto. Tell me that's not a socialist class warfare war cry. Y'all been eating long enough now. Stop being greedy. Keep it real, partner. Give to the needy. Ribs are touching, so don't make me wait. Man, DMX, even if he don't know it, he is a communist. That is class analysis. Anyway, we start our morning off with, what was it? Paid in Full. Classic track remix. Eric B. and Rakim. I heard they were coming back together. What's the word on the streets? Screets. Eric B. and Rakim getting back together for a tour? What's going on with that? Anyway, Paid in Full by Eric B. and Rakim. Followed up by DMX, as my sons call him DMNX. I don't know why they call him DMNX. But Stop Being Greedy. Of course, it's the radio edit, but you can't really get into it. You don't let FCC spoil the message. Go look up, go pull up the unedited version. Because y'all been eating long enough now. Stop being greedy. Keep it real, partner. Give to the needy. Ribs are touching. Don't make me wait. Mess around and I'm going to bite you and snatch the plate. Arr, arr. That is a communist manifesto. Class warfare. You know. But anyway, I progress. Good morning, everyone. This is another broadcast of the Bro Diallo show. We all over 200 shows, 3 years in. Man, we getting it in. We banging on out. I appreciate all of y'all for listening. There's a lot to get into, so I cannot dilly-dally. I don't know where to start. Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi, who is the majority, the congressional majority leader, has said that impeaching Donald Trump would be a waste of time. Now, I don't know if this is deja vu all over again, but if you remember, Nancy Pelosi is the same scumbag politician. I'm sorry, I can't call her a scumbag. She's a woman. And according to feminists, when women get into power, things are to be different. When we could purge a little estrogen and get women in positions of power within the corrupt, oppressive, racist, capitalist, omnicidal system, when women take power, things would be different. Because reasons. Never been proven, never been demonstrated that women are just as capable of corruption as men, but let's run with that. Nancy Pelosi, the first in history, she is the first and the second in history. She was the first woman, she was the first female congressional majority leader, and then she was the second because she got ousted because of Obama's capitulation, because of Obama's neoliberalism. Obama lost the goodwill of the people, and so his party suffered. She got ousted, and now she then crawled and edged and slithered her way right back into an extremely powerful position, and a powerful position that has been tasked with, that has been mandated to oversee the executive branch. The Congress is tasked constitutionally to oversee the executive branch. Congress is the legislative branch. Congress essentially sets the nation's priorities and sets the nation's budget. The executive branch, one part is to oversee the defense of the territorial integrity of the United States. Another is to carry out the instructions handed out down to it by the legislative branch. I don't know what that hum is in my ear, but I'm going to ignore it. If it drives me crazy, you'll know why. If I start talking about, prophets and gods, it's because I've lost my damn mind because there's this incessant humming in my earphones. But I progress. So their job, Trump's job as the executive, is not to create law. It's not to dictate the budget. That's the problem. That's why he's trying to do this dirty state of emergency thing, because he's trying to expand the power from an executive branch to a dictatorial branch of the government. But it not work. Not yet. Eventually, the United States will degrade into an autocracy. He's just not smart enough to pull it out. And the United States is very ripe for authoritarian governance, much like what Russia has, a white ethno state. It's very ripe. It's just Trump is too damn stupid to pull it off. So they need a little bit more clever Caucasus Mountain cave-dwelling devil to get in there. He's not the devil to do it. But anyway, we ain't talking about Trump. We're talking about Pelosi. Pelosi, her constitutional obligation, her constitutional mandate, her constitutional responsibility is to have oversight of the president. And this trick tells us that it's a waste of time to enforce the Constitution. Now, I'm not about to cry. I'm not a patriot. I could be defined, if someone defines me and says you're anti-American, I wouldn't even fight that label. I am anti-American. I said it. I'm a U.S. citizen by birth. But I'm not what America made me to be. And through all the years of educational indoctrination, religious indoctrination, patriotic indoctrination, it just didn't stick with me. I wish it had. I wish I could be a mindless American drone, a consumer in USA, and I could watch millionaires chase balls for pointless games and get enjoyment out of that. I wish that was me. I wish I could live a life of consumption. I wish I could. But the indoctrination didn't stick. I'm like that dude from the Matrix. That remember that guy that was like, plug me back into the Matrix? I wish I could go back. Because it ain't easy. Y'all don't have no love. Y'all don't like freedom fighters. Y'all don't like revolutionaries unless we die a tragic death. Because I'm vegan and I work out, I probably won't even die a tragic death. So I'll live a long life. So I'm doomed. But beyond that, back to Pelosi. She said it's a waste of time to do her constitution. What does she think her job is? What does she think she's supposed to do? And they waste time. You saw that the Congress passed a Senate not a Senate, but a congressional resolution to denounce hate. First, they were going to denounce anti-Semitism, and they were going to censure Ilhan Omar. And they were like, well, what do you mean denounce anti-Semitism? She didn't say anything about that was anti-Semitic. She made a critique of a political situation. Outside influence of lobbying and external nations influence over the U.S. Legislative branch, and how the U.S. legislators have undue loyalty to foreign nations. She didn't even say no names. But we all know that the nation of Israel, that the lobbying of AIPAC, we all know that the nation of Israel and the Zionists have undue influence over the U.S. legislative, judicial, and executive branches of the federal government, as well as state and local governments. So they said, you're being anti-Semitic. And a bunch of rabbis, a bunch of Orthodox Jewish rabbis stood up and went into Ilhan Omar's office and said nothing anti-Semitic. There was nothing anti-Semitic about her comments. There's nothing untrue about her comments. So they were like, damn, we can't censure this little Somali Muslim woman. So we're going to just flip it, smack it, flip it, and rub it down, and we're going to make it like an anti-hate. Now, we can all rest easier. Black folks, hey, black people, y'all listening? Hey, black people, the federal government has denounced racism, among other things. There's other things like you can't hate Muslims, but we know we don't get hated. Black Muslims, if a cop is busting at you, if they splitting your head open, it ain't because you pray to Allah. Black people, I know y'all like to believe it. I know even black people like to believe that, it's some other reason. But black people, the federal government, the highest, most powerful branch of the federal government, the most democratic branch of the federal government, has stated that They don't like hate. Hate is bad thing. They said that hate is bad and they will not have it told. So we safe now. We safe. We can do like, remember the end of The Wiz when they took off them dark skin black costumes and they had light skin under? We could all, let's do, can you feel a brand new day? Can you feel a brand new day? It's a brand new day in America. It's a brand new day in America. Because the U.S. Congress has denounced hate. Oh, I just feel the warmth. And anti-Semitism. They've denounced anti-Semitism, but they've also denounced anti-Islamicism. So they're gonna, is that no more drone bombs? Wait, what? Huh? Wait, something's coming in my ear headphones. Oh, they're still dropping bombs on Syria, Iraq, Iran, They're still bombing the hell out of the Middle East. I mean, hey, I'd rather you hate me in your heart than bomb me with your drone. But whatever. Whole bunch of nothing. Back to Nancy. This trick said that it's a waste of time to enforce the Constitution, which to me means she should be impeached. This is the second time. Back in 2006, between 2006 and 2004, the George Bush administration had been exposed to have committed dozens upon dozens of crimes. They lied about the war in Iraq. They embezzled funds. Over $1 trillion came up missing from the budget. Money was stolen. They had been engaged in torture and rendition. They had been violating habeas corpus rights of U.S. citizens. The Bush White House, George W. Bush, the second Bush to hold the presidency, had been exposed to have committed dozens of crimes. And there was a midterm election in, I believe, 2004. No, that was it was a re-election, upon his re-election. When Bush retook the office, the Democrats had retaken the legislative branch. And the citizens were saying, we want Bush held accountable for his many crimes. And this is before this is before Bush became Michelle Obama's side dude, before Michelle Obama was even in the national consciousness, before she was twerking up on and sucking on Bush's candy. This is before all that. Before Bush was the wholesome old statesman who paints pictures and, like I said, plays footsies under the table with Michelle, cucking Barack. This is back when Bush was the mass murdering villain that I remember him to be. And the people were saying, impeach Bush, impeach Bush. And Nancy Pelosi took power, took her little gavel, and said, banged on the table and said, impeachment is off the table. Impeachment is off the table. She didn't say why. She didn't say impeachment's off the table because he didn't commit crimes. She didn't say the impeachment's off the table because the masses don't want impeachment and we are a democratic body that must bow to the will of the people. She said impeachment is off the table because of reasons. It's just off the table. So this woman don't want to do her job. She's lazy. She's unqualified. All the things they say about black people. So now, Trump is free to commit crimes because the only enforcement mechanism that is available to the U.S. citizens when a president commits high crimes and misdemeanors is the impeachment. They're saying that the president can't be indicted. He can't be brought up on criminal charges. You can investigate and you can have all the hearings you want, but there will be no enforcement. So what incentive does Trump have to not continue to commit crimes? Just like George W. Bush. So I'm pretty sure after Trump, who might get a second term, they about to run Biden's old crusty, spoiled cottage cheese looking ass. They about to run Biden. Biden just did a talk to the firemen or something, and everybody, run, Joe, run. They want Joe Biden, old spoiled milk. Ugh, yuck. And I mean, they just got all these crappy candidates on the Democratic side. So, I mean, and so Trump might get 2 terms. Trump might leave office after one term and go and restart his reality TV career. And I'm pretty sure after he leave the House, Michelle, like just like every other the last corrupt, mass murdering criminal white president, he gonna leave the White House, and Michelle Obama's gonna slide into his DM. Hey, Daddy, Zaddy, you got some candy? Man, Michelle's a weird chick, man. Yeah, I said it. I'm gonna keep saying it. Who twerks up on and sucks on the candy of mass murderers? I don't eat candy for mass murderers. But she's into that. But I don't want to kink shame Michelle Obama. This ain't about the kink shaming of Michelle Obama. This is about the failures of Nancy Pelosi. And you know how it is when an oppressed group, one member of an oppressed group does wrong. A black man robbed a bank, every black men are criminals. You know, they had some brother got into a horrible, horrible fight. I didn't watch the whole tape. I don't even know. But it was some dude fighting with his girlfriend, a domestic violence thing on somebody posted to Facebook. And the dude had a gun and was threatening these two women. And he was like screaming and just totally erratic and irrational. And the women were like, get out my face. And he was like, give me my keys. And he's waving this gun around. I'm like, I don't want to see how this plays out. But I look at the comments, and nobody said, this dude did wrong. Nobody said this black guy is the scum of the earth. Everybody was like, black men. Some woman was like, yeah, that's why I don't deal with black men. Some woman was like, black men in Chicago, which I am one, ain't this, ain't that. Everybody's attacking black men, not that black man. And I've been getting that all my life. I can't tell you how many times I've been detained by the police, even as a little child, because some random black man did some random thing somewhere in the world, and they just do a dragnet and scoop up every black man in the area. So I know it. That's how it is when you're an oppressed population. When you are an oppressed population. I can't say oppressed minority because that won't fit into the next point I'm making. But when you are an oppressed population, demographic, if one of your members do something, all of y'all done did it. All of y'all carry that weight. So Nancy Pelosi being a woman to woman, she's a woman. Women are oppressed. Patriarchal system, all that. So I'm going to do y'all like we get did. And y'all women don't do your jobs. Unfit to hold the office. How does it feel? How that zing, how that stinger, how that feel? I'm going to dish out a little pain that I get. But then y'all sympathetic to that. Y'all trying to tell me about R. Kelly's childhood. I don't give a damn about R. Kelly's childhood. The man's 50 cotton-picking years old, and he's had more than enough money and resources to get the help if he really wanted to help. You can't fall back on that. You can't go by that. So, you know, and the bottom line is white criminality is legal. Let me just stop playing around. White criminality is legal. It's justified. When I took a class in criminal justice in college, it was a liberal, progressive white man. I believe it was Brooklyn College. Yeah, it was Brooklyn College. And this white man walks in there. Liberal, progressive. They used to call Brooklyn College the Little Red Schoolhouse because of its pinko socialist leanings. And he walks in there. And he was ready to blow our young, impressionable minds. And he looks at the class and says, let me tell you one thing. If you know nothing else about criminal code, criminal justice, criminal law, if you go on, many of you will go on to be police officers. Many of you will go on to be lawyers. Many of you will go on to be legislators. And let me tell you this, young budding political scientist, criminal law has nothing to do with morality. Law in itself has nothing to do with morality, has nothing to do with right or wrong. It's all about power. And that has stuck with me. That's all I remember from that class. I don't even remember that dude's name. But that's one thing I'll never forget. So white criminality, just like the United States, the whole country is a criminal. Dale Jones said, the United States is a criminal enterprise founded by a bunch of criminals. The United States has never been consistent with its own constitution. Remember, Dr. King said, what was Dr. King fighting for? Dr. King said he wanted America to live up to the content of its creed. which means he said he wants America to live up to the letter of the law. Dr. King was basically saying, we want you to follow your own damn rules. I'm not even telling you to do what I say. I'm not telling you to do what I'm telling you to do what you said you was going to do. Live up to the content of your creed. Live up to the standard you set for yourself. Don't even worry about the standards I'm setting. Do what you said you're going to do. Represent. The United States has never, they were violating the letter, because you have both the written law and then you have the intent of the law. The United States never lived up to the content of the creed, and then the U.S. went on to sign on to treaties and international agreements and international law, international norms, international protocols, and has violated every single one of them. The United States is a rogue nation. Noam Chomsky wrote a whole book on it. The United States is a criminal nation, but it doesn't matter because laws are only as relevant as their capacity to be enforced. So the United States breaks a law, what does it do? Nothing. Venezuela doesn't break international law, but is accused of breaking international law, accused of violating its own constitution, which it hasn't done. And they can get sanctions, they can get a blockade, they can get their border shut down, all kind of stuff. Can't nobody do that to America. Who's going to blockade America? So this is really a lawless nation. And because the United States is a superpower, it sets the standards for all other powers. So this is basically a lawless planet. This is not a planet governed by law. This is a barbaric system. We live under a barbaric society. And I know you got your little supercomputer in your pocket. You guys, when you get in the car, we got self-driving cars, run on Elon Musk's battery technology. Y'all can telecommute. Y'all get on these planes, except for the 737 Supermax. Y'all get on these planes and they fly around the world. So you really think, wow, look I'm living in the space age. No, you're not. You're living in basic barbarism. High-tech, technological, digital, Wi-Fi, G5, omnicidal barbarism. Because when the powerful people, the people who make the laws, are allowed to openly violate the laws, then that is tyranny. That is barbarism. But many of us don't care, because as long as the Super Bowl gets broadcast, as long as you can walk into these tacky ass chain stores and you see all these sweatshop manufactured products, and you got enough fiat in your pocket to buy a little yak, to buy the latest fashion, and to watch the latest pop star clone celebrity gyrate on your TV or gyrate on the stage, who cares, right? They can kill everybody else as long as America. And where did that even... One thing I hate hearing more than, you're being propagandized when you hear this thing called American lives. How many American lives? There's no such thing as an American life. Oh, the plane crashed in Ethiopia. 8 American lives lost. Ain't no such thing as an American life. American lives. I hate that. That's why I can't consume corporate news. That's why y'all need to support the Bro Diallo show, because ain't nobody gonna tell you this. There's no such thing as American lives. But I digress. This is a criminal planet. The law is only enforced on people who don't have the power. I could go walk out this store, walk out here, walk into a store and steal a candy bar, and I'll get more time than a mass murdering politician. I'll get more time than a wealthy CEO who destroys entire ecosystem, that drives entire animal species into extinction, and they get a bonus. I steal a candy bar because I'm hungry. I am going to jail. This is high-tech barbarism. And we out here pointing fingers at each other, at black folks. You broke the law. You broke the law. Don't do the crime if you don't do the time. You can't do the time. Let me tell you something about me and what I should be able to tell you about every other black person. There's only one law black people have to adhere to, and that's don't harm other black people. And don't get mad at me for saying that, oh, that's racist. I didn't say it. Neely Fuller said it. Go read Neely Fuller. The only law we really should abide by, the only law that's justifiable, is not to harm any other oppressed person. Anything you do that does not level harm or hardship on another oppressed person, that's between you and nobody else, because this system does not have any legitimate hold on us. This guy named Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a long time ago, wrote this book called The Social Contract. And the social contract basically laid out an individual's relationship and obligation to the state, and the state's obligation and relationship to the individual. And according to the state has to fulfill certain basic requirements in order to be able to require the loyalty and obedience of a citizen. And if the state doesn't meet its obligation, then that frees the citizen or the individual of their obligation. And so the state has never lived up to its obligation to black people. So the only obligation they can get from us is obligation they can get at the point of a gun. Obey the law or we will kill you. Okay, fine, I'll obey the law. We obey the law and they kill us anyway. Social contract has been broken. Not that it was ever mended in the first place. So I ain't mad at Jesse Smollett. I ain't mad at Asada and the Black Liberation Army robbing banks. I ain't mad at the legit Nigerian scammers. Because we look at white folks and they break the law with impunity. And a lot of the times when they break the law long enough, instead of enforcing the law, they just make the law legal. Remember prohibition? They were like, oh, white boys was out here. Al Capone, I'm in Chicago right now. Al Capone had his Gatling gun doing drive-bys trying to protect his illegal distribution of a controlled substance. Gangster. And did they say, okay, we're going to expand the prison system? We're going to impose mandatory minimums? No, they were like, oh, let's rewrite the Constitution to make alcohol legal again. They could have done the same thing with crack cocaine that they put in our communities. So let's move on. I'm utterly disgusted with Nancy Pelosi. I can't believe she's pulling this again, even though there wouldn't be no Trump. If Nancy Pelosi had advanced and moved forward with impeachment proceedings of George W. Bush, if Barack Obama had taken office and said, I'm going to lock up these damn bankers, and I'm going to open up ongoing investigations to the Bush regime's crimes, from Iraq to Afghanistan, I'm going to reopen an investigation into the 9/11 cover-up, there wouldn't be no Trump. But not only did Obama and Pelosi not investigate and attempt to bring justice for the crimes of the Bush administration, they proceeded to repeat and advance. So Obama didn't only did he not hold the criminals accountable, he got into office and started engaging in the same crimes. America is a criminal enterprise run by a bunch of criminals. And you can't reform it. Well, y'all ain't trying to reform it. Y'all trying to integrate into it. Y'all want it to stay as. Y'all just trying to elevate within it. Y'all want to sit in the penthouse of a burning cathedral. Good luck with that. Moving on. I don't have a lot of time. There's so much here. I'm gonna just run through this. Send prayers up that we can get through everything. Haiti. The Haitian president stole over $4 billion from Venezuela, from the Haitian people. And then he turned around and sided with the United States, recognizing and supporting the coup against Venezuela after, it's just disgusting. Moise, Jovenel, Moise, the current dictator of Haiti, illegitimate leader of Haiti, is one of the scummiest he's the worst black president since Obama. Scum of the earth. But that's why Haiti's burning. And that's not why Haiti's burning, but that's one of the latest reasons why, for the latest. But there's so much to do with Haiti. But then they tried to accuse the Maduro administration in Venezuela. And this, I don't know, maybe y'all don't understand the real depth of this whole attempt to overthrow the the Bolivarian Revolution. This isn't even about Haiti. This is about the Bolivarian Revolution. This includes, they've already successfully overturned the progressive government of Chile, Bolivia, of Brazil, and now the last two holdouts is again, like before, Venezuela and Cuba. The Cubans, America tells us that socialism doesn't work. And I would like for them to step back and just demonstrate the proof is in the pudding. Why don't they just step back and allow socialism not to work if it doesn't work? Why do you need bombs? But anyway, Venezuela, there was an aid convoy of trucks set ablaze. The United States lied and said Maduro has a starving population and he's burning food and medicine. And then it comes out that every single major media outlet in the United States said that the Maduro Venezuelan government, the legitimate Venezuelan government, destroyed or burned aid to the people. And we find out that it was a lie, an absolute lie, that it was the Guaido and the anti-government protesters, the right-wing fascists that burned the food. And this is exactly what they do every time. That's what you call a false flag attack. The United States and its lackeys commit a horrendous crime or atrocities and then blame their victims. That's a false flag operation. So they say Maduro's people are starving and they're sick and he's burning food and medicine. And then they go and sabotage the power grid of Venezuela and then say Maduro government is incompetent. He's not even capable of keeping the power on. If socialism doesn't work, just step back to the United States and let it not work. But that's not true. Socialism does work. That's why they have to relentlessly attack any socialist state. Same thing they did in Vietnam. The United States attacked itself and lied and said the North Vietnamese did an attack in the Gulf of Tonkin, tried to sink a U.S. destroyer that had no business being there. Remember, weapons of mass destruction? Remember when they said the Iraqi security forces were throwing babies out of incubators, and this young Kuwaiti girl came and lied to Congress? Why didn't they lock her up? It's against the law to lie to Congress. But I guess Kavanaugh sat and lied in Congress. All kind of people come and lie to Congress. Now, if I tell a lie to the judge to protect my mama from going to jail, they lock me up. But we see people broadcast across the world. Supreme Court justices sit and perjure themselves before Congress. And nothing. That's why the law, the social contract is broken. This is a barbaric system. They're not enforcing laws against us. They're imposing their will on us, which is a totally different thing. So don't tell me nothing about lawfulness. Bibi Netanyahu, Benjamin, the criminal indicted president, prime minister of the nation of Israel, finally said and settled it once and for all. He stated, and I quote, "The nation of Israel is a nation of the Jewish people alone." Which means it's an ethno-state. It's an ethno-apartheid state. Now, when Netanyahu said that Israel is a Jewish-only state, a state for, by, and of the Jewish people alone, not just, oh, we welcome the Jewish people, we embrace the Jewish people, we are nothing but Jews. Now, I don't hold these stats in my head. I had to look it up. 21% of the citizens of Israel are not Jews. 21%. So that's a higher population than black people are. They say black people, we teeter between 13 to 16%. We've been at 13 to 16% since the Emancipation Proclamation because the United States has committed genocide against us. So they've always wanted to keep the black population in the United States at a manageable level. But that's not the issue here. In Israel, is it real? As the late, great Steve Coakley used to call it, is it real? In the nation of is it real? Because it's not a legitimate state. It's a settler colony. Ain't got nothing to do. Don't come to me with no damn Bible. God is not a real estate broker. The Torah is a book of fiction, of absurd fiction, just like the Quran, just like the Bible, just like the Bhagavad Gita, all that non-delusional, feverish dreams. Male chauvinist murder cults. Every major religion is a male chauvinist murder cult. So don't give me no male chauvinist murderous serial killer God to justify any action on earth. I'm not buying it. Take that somewhere else. But the nation's leader, Netanyahu, who will go to jail if they enforce, I don't know if they enforce laws on the elites in Israel. I know they don't do that here. He should have ran, Netanyahu should be, if he was president of the United States, he'd be free and clear, because Nancy Pelosi would be like, I can't impeach him for all of his corruption. But anyway, he just basically stripped citizenship from 21% of the population. That's wild. Can you imagine if Trump got up tomorrow and said, the United States is a nation of Christians and Christians only? There would be rioting in the streets. I believe even Nancy Pelosi would impeach him. That's just, you don't know how wild, how just out of pocket the nation of Israel is. And the nation of Israel is and has always been a disruptive force. That's why the United States set up the nation of Israel. That's why they do it. They want a wild card in the region. They want a bagman. They need a nation that can do the dirt that they are unwilling or unable to do. And we're going to get back to Israel when we talk about this issue of reparations, because I know we like to hoop and holler about how the Jews got reparations. They didn't really get reparations. And I know what? Jews did get reparations. Jews got reparations. I'm going to tell you, you don't want to mimic the Jews. And I'm sorry, I'm not even talking about the Jews, because I know it's black people out here who think they Jews, black Hebrew Israelites. We got the Falasha Jews, Ethiopian Jews. We got all kind of Jews, just a religion. Anybody, I could be a Jew tomorrow. I can go to a synagogue and do whatever silly ritual they do and become a Jew tomorrow. So let me not say the Jews. Let me say the Zionists. And the Zionists are a very particular sect of Jews. But then all Zionists are not Jews. There are more Christian Zionists in the world than Jewish Zionists. But I'm talking about the Zionists, not really the Jews. Because, I mean, that's a wide breadth of, and I'm on here always. I'm quoting Norman Finkelstein. I'm on here quoting Chomsky and all these others. So let me say, I just have to be more accurate. And I do get messages. People are like, you're always talking about white people. I have policemen contact me and say, you talk about police, you got to be more specific. You talk about white people, you need to be more specific. You talk about women, you need to be more specific. Listen, ain't nobody got time for that. How? I don't have time for that. I have to use these blanket terms. If the shoe fit, wear it. If the shoe fits, wear it. Y'all know what I'm saying. Those who need to know should know, do know. But I continue to digress. The nation of Israel and the Zionist faction in the nation of Israel have showed their bloody hands. Israel, which we've always known. We've known since the 60s. We've known since the 50s. The Israel is an apartheid ethno state. Is a white ethno state, a racist nation. Is an illegitimate nation engaged in genocide. And I know it's wrong to say it, but I don't intend to run for Congress, so I'm free to tell the truth. Oh. What time we got? Okay, we're doing okay on time. We're doing better than I expected on time. That's why you have a little faith. Faith means nothing. Faith is absolutely nothing. But this cheating scandal. Anyway, let me say this before I move on. Support the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement. And the reason I like this boycott, divestment, and sanction movement is because when you do the initials BDS, it lines up with the Bro Diallo show. So I'm hoping if the BDS movement take off, I might get a little residual from that. And people out here looking for BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanction, and end up stumbling into the Bro Diallo show. So I do support boycott, divestment, and sanction. I fully support that. So, good for me. And good for you. If you also support the BDS. As far as this cheating scandal, oh, let me tell you something. A rich black person told me. Let me tell you something. A rich black person took me to the side and told me the key, one of the keys. They gave me a lot of jewels. But this is something I see, that I see applied, that they told me. She took me aside and said, and I'm going to say what she said, and this is a quote, so I'm being academic. I'm not trying to be crass. She looked me dead in my eye. Wealthy, successful beyond all. I mean, academically, economically, just everything. I mean, she's just Oprah without the cameras. She said to me, remember this, no is for niggas. No is for niggas. And I didn't quite understand that. But as I get older, I begin to better comprehend what she meant. Telling a young black man just starting out in life, 17 years old, trying to find my way in the world. No is for niggas. Now, what that means is, all these laws they have, all these rules, all these regulations, all these limitations, white people don't follow none of it. Remember, they try to tell you, you want to buy a house, you got to get a certain credit rating. Or you can't get a loan to buy a house. You can't open a business unless you do this. You can't be successful unless you work hard. All these, you got to work twice as hard to get half as far. That only applies to us, and it's all fiction. These white people, mainly the white elites, they don't pay taxes. They do drugs. They don't save. They're not thrifty. They're not even brilliant. Even the things they have, like Mark Zuckerberg didn't make the Facebook. Steve Jobs didn't make the Apple computer. Bill Gates didn't create Windows. They lie, they cheat, they steal with absolute impunity. While we're out here trying to hustle to find out what rule to obey. And we out here thinking we ain't successful because we don't follow the plan. And we got all these black hustlers and shucksters out here telling us the millionaires, the millionaire code book. When every millionaire is just steal other people's money, find a way to take other people's stuff from them. That's the key. There's no way to do $1 million, let alone $1 billion worth of work. The only way to get $1 billion is to take from other people's work. Make other people do your work. And some people, black people, are now to the point we so sophisticated. Yeah, you learn the game. Yeah, that's how you got to just learn the game. And if the game is corrupt, then you learn how to game. But then when we learn the game, Bill Cosby, when we learn the game, R. Kelly, Michael Jackson, when we learn the game and get the money, all these black politicians out here who thought they could take a little money under the table. We just got a whole small suburban government of Joliet. The feds went and arrested the whole police department, the whole mayor's office, everybody, the kids, the dogs, everybody went to jail. They impounded the dogs, put the kids in juvie, locked the mayor up. The feds is on it. So that's actually not true. So even these black people telling other black people, learn the rules of the game and then outcompete white men. You can't outcompete a damn cheater. When we start keeping pace, they change the tempo. And we really got black people who sit out here and think, oh, white people outthink us, they outwork us, they outcompete us. And that's why they're so successful and why black people have a zero wealth. Why white people got all the money and all the power and we have nothing because they think so hard. Because they understand. Ain't no rules to this. The only rule is victory. The only morality is victory. So they killed. Even when the first thing I thought when I saw the Indonesian airline and the Ethiopian airline, you go look up the Ethiopian airline, you'll find that it was getting more and more market share. British Airways and U.S. international flight companies, Ethiopian Airlines was taking over some of the largest markets. And what do you think they're going to do when an African airline starts to out compete? Remember back in the 80s and they had that movie Gung Ho? And they had another movie with Wesley Snipes and Sean Connery. I think it was Sun Rising or Red Sun or something. And they were showing that the giant, remember, some of y'all too young for this, some of y'all. But there was a time where the biggest threat in America was, after communism, was the Japanese. And they were telling America, the Japanese are going to take over the world. And these right-wing conservatives would talk about all the land that the Japanese own skyscrapers. The Japanese are going to take over the world economically. They're going to undermine America. And everything they say about the Chinese now is what they were telling us about the Japanese. And there'd be all these investigative stories and all these exposés about how powerful the Japanese are becoming and how America is threatened to be taken over and overrun by Japanese. And even if you go look at the sitcoms from the early 90s, you go look at A Different World, and Dwayne Wayne, this brilliant mathematician character, and he wanted to work for Konnichiwa Industries. And every black person's aspiration, and black people were learning to speak Japanese. And and all the prominent Negro little colored boys driver schools were going to teach you Japanese so that you can compete in the emerging Japanese market and go overseas and go work for Konnichiwa Industry. Where's Japan today? Japan has historically had the longest reign of stagflation of any other nation. Economic stagnation. And now what do we know Japan for? Blackface, goofiness, tentacle porn. So I've heard. But nobody's talking about Japan taking over America anymore. Why? Because the United States started competing harder, working harder? No, because the United States, if you start to outcompete these, they will tell you, follow the rules. If you want to be successful, follow the rules. And when you follow rules and become successful, they will kill you. So I'm not saying don't try. I'm not like Michael Jackson in The Wiz. You can't win, you can't make it, and you can't get out of the game. What I'm saying is don't play their game. Flip the table over. Establish your own games. Establish your own institutions, your own protocols. Write your own damn constitution. Start to print and validate your own currency. And if we're not in a position to do it, we work towards it. If it takes 100 years, we start today. Within 1 year, we'll only have 99 years left. I'm saying this system does not work. It's not even working for the majority of white people, let alone go integrate us into it. You cannot obey their laws. They will violate their laws, their constitutions, their fundamental morality. They will violate their 10 commandments. They will violate everything to stay on top. This is a criminal system, a psychopathic system, and we have to fight it. Which is a good segue. Let's get into the topic at hand. This is Bro Diallo's show. I'm broadcasting out of the city of Chicago. The city of Chirac. I guess I'm stuck on saying the sanctuary of hypocrisy. I don't hear that rhetoric anymore about it. Is Chicago still officially a sanctuary city? Which is highly offensive to me. When you got black people, you got, parts of this city that are an absolute kill zone. And for that scumbag Zionist mayor to say, and something tells me Rahm Emanuel, who's also a crook, to me, I watch him. After he leaves office, I think he's going to move to Israel and run for office there. Something tells me that. I think he's going to replace Netanyahu. Let's see if my prophetic skills are what they are. But anyway, Q4 Radio, broadcasting out of the city of Chicago. You can listen live at q4.org, anywhere in the world. At the Q4 website, we broadcast a wide array of shows. You can tune in at the Q4 website. You can also download the TuneIn apps or iTunes Radio and simply search Q4. That's Q-U-E and the number 4, Q4 Radio. Also, if you are in the city of Chirac, you can also listen at AM 1680 on the traditional radio AM frequency. Also, you can support the Bro Diallo Show that broadcasts every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Standard Time by going to diallokenyatta.com, making a one-time donation to help sustain the show, or you can become a Patreon. And you'll soon be able to go on to African World Order. And African World Order is a online retail store where the proceeds from the African World Order go to sustain Pan-African efforts. And you can read more about that. So, be on the lookout for that. So, African World Order is coming back very soon. Now, the show today is entitled Paying in Full, the Reality of Reparations. Reparations is getting a lot of rhetoric, and there is, which I hate talking about, but there is this ADOS movement. And the ADOS movement has not come up with any new ideas, which is fine. There's so many ideas out there. We've got 1,500 years of ideas and philosophies and movements that you can draw from. I have no problem with people drawing from old ideas. What I do have a problem with, especially the ADOS, is people taking old ideas and distorting and perverting them. So the ADOS will go and distort and pervert. The reparations movement has been around since officially 1863. African people, the reparations movement has been around since 1863. Formal reparations organizations have been around for over a half a century. In Cobra, been around 30, 40 years. You got people like Randall Robinson, Dr. Conrad Worrell, as one of the people I consider a personal mentor, Bill Grace, or Grace, as we call William Grace, or as I know him as Samori, who worked on reparations. All of these people I talk about in their work on reparations are Pan-Africanists. None of them were nationalist. None of them were Americanist. None of them wanted to be made white or isolated the justice movement to just black people in the United States. They always understood that our struggle has always been global, international, and been rooted in Africa, not in opposition to Africa. But then ADOS comes and say, no, we're the reparations organizations, and they distort and degrade reparations. So, let's talk about reparations. Paying in full. Reparations, at one time, they've been around since man has organized, but reparations was initially understood to be between nation to nation. Nation to nation. Meaning if two nations go to war, generally the victorious nation would demand reparations from the losing nation. And that's been going around since man has organized themselves to conduct warfare and to organize a state. It wasn't until, 1919, that reparations was considered to be a thing that could be given by a state to individuals or to a population. That was 1919 with the Treaty of Versailles. That gave us our modern concept of reparations. The Treaty of Versailles not only demanded that the aggressors, the Axis, the Germans, had to pay reparations to the combative nation, that the nation had to make the civilians who were harmed by the actions of the state whole. 1919. And what's peculiar about that? What's peculiar about that is white people, by the time 1919 had come around, for almost 500 years had been embarked on a worldwide orgy of imperialism, murder, and genocide. All over the world. And it never crossed the mind of a European to even come up with the concept of reparations for civilians until white people got a taste of their own medicine. The same thing happened with genocide. Genocide was not a concept, was not even a thing until 1948. There was no crime of genocide. until the UN Convention on Genocide in 1948. Now, by 1948, again, over 5 centuries of genocide had been conducted. But it wasn't no such thing as genocide until white folks got a taste of their own medicine, until white people imposed on themselves the same thing, until white people did within Europe what they had been doing all over the world to black, brown, red, blue, yellow, and all other peoples. Same thing with this reparations thing. They never thought about the people of the New World or anything like that. But then they were like, oh, let's not just have nation-to-nation negotiation for reparations. Let's have reparations for wrongly harmed civilian populations. So one thing that could tell us is white people still don't see non-whites as fully human. That they can subject us to black people, Aboriginal people, Asian people, Native American people, Pacific Islander people, and white people who don't have a full subscription to the white club. Like Slavic people, Jewish people, Southern Europeans, Central Europeans, Eastern Europeans. They believe that the Russians in them, they believe their blood is tainted because of the Mongol hordes. So white people have more racial divisions internally than they do have externally. It's crazy. That's the psychopathic racial personality. This race thing is really it's madness. Racism and racists are literally insane people. But they don't see people as fully human. And in order to, if your humanity, because it is true, if your humanity is based on denying someone else's humanity, then you're psychopathic. And there are even white historians and white psychologists that even say Europeans don't really have an identity unless it's an oppositional identity. What are you? I'm not a nigger. I'm not a chink. I'm not a spick. So it's aggression. It's crazy, but we don't even have time to get into that. And let me tell you something, black folks, we can't fix this. Only thing we can do is reduce our vulnerability to it. But I digress. So in 1919 came the really first acceptance by those in power, by states. Now, black people have been crying 40 acres and a mule about reparations for the longest. But it wasn't until the 1919 that states were like, yeah, states should be obligated to the people that they wrong. And by mandate, not just out of the goodness of their heart. But before, reparations was paid by nation to nation. So one of the things you understand, one of the prerequisites for securing reparations, and even though there's some new ideas to enter into the struggle for reparations, the fundamental understanding is reparations can only be requested from a victor, from the loser. So you have to defeat someone before you can secure reparations from them. The United States didn't come to Nazi Germany and say, Nazi Germany, you have to pay war reparations. In the middle of the war, at the start of the war. Only when the Nazis were thoroughly defeated did they get reparations. Now, you know that the United States is calling for war reparations from North Korea and Vietnam. The United States has looked to North Korea and Vietnam. There are movements to say, hey, y'all killed a bunch of our soldiers and y'all should pay us. Of course, because North Korea was not defeated and Vietnam was not defeated, they're like, you can kiss my ass, America. We're not paying you nothing. But of course, also, the United States owes North Korea and Korea, the entire Korean peninsula, reparations, and no Vietnam. But they haven't collected either because there was no clear victor. There was more of a war of détente. It was more of a stalemate. That's number one. You have to defeat. So if we really are serious about reparations, we would have to organize ourselves to defeat a military armed victory against our oppressors, our enslavers, the United States government, before we could force them to say, hey, you have to pay us reparations. There is no case. when a non-defeated enemy was forced to sit down and pay reparations to someone they defeated. Another element of reparations is you have to pay reparations when you are caught and convicted of a crime. I have a homeboy. I had a homeboy who wanted to be a rapper. I had two homeboys that wanted to be a rappers. And this was before you could just, get Fruity Loops on your laptop and go in your bathroom and, bust out an album. This is back when you had to have the reel-to-reels and, DATs and all that stuff. So they were trying to get this equipment, and they were buying this equipment, and they were buying shoddy equipment. They were just having a lot of trouble trying to put together this studio in my homie's garage. And so then they ran out of money. And one, my homeboy, he was a booster. He'd steal stuff and sell it and sell car stereos. My other homie, he was a nickel and dime drug dealer. But they ran out of money. It was very expensive to be a rapper back in the day. And they were they felt like they were on the verge of putting out the most fire hip-hop album anyone had ever heard. And it was like they can't let anything get in the way of their dreams. So long story short, they decided they cased this pawn shop. And they saw that this pawn shop had some key equipment that they needed to finish setting up their studio so they could finish putting out their album. And they decided, we'll come back after hours and break in this pawn shop and get this stuff. So anyway, they went to break in the pawn shop. The silent alarm went off. They got apprehended. They got caught. So I ain't like I'm stitching. This was years ago, and they already did their time. But my homies had to pay reparations to the store owner. Even after he got out of jail, he used to complain to me. He's like, man, I'm trying to get myself back on my feet, and they keep hitting me with this money, and if I don't pay, I go back to jail. So he had to pay reparations. Not only did he get tried and convicted of the crime and sentenced to a limited amount of time, and then after he was out of jail, he was still monitored on parole. He had to start to pay reparations, restitutions to the pawn shop owner. So, in order to get your reparations, to get what's owed you, you have to have the power to sanction them, because he said, if I don't pay, I go back to jail. So if black people go to the United States and say, give us reparations, and the United States says, how about no, what are the consequences? You have to be able to defeat them or be in a position to defeat, and you have to be in a position to impose consequences if the debt is not paid. And this is the reality of reparations. Reparations has never been about, they didn't say to my homie, pay these reparations because it's the right thing to do. Pay the reparations because you wronged this pawn shop. They said pay these damn reparations, regardless of how you feel about it, because if not, there will be swift and immediate and detrimental consequences for you if you do not put up the money. And we don't want to hear that you don't have it. And he had a baby mama and a little baby out there. It's like, we don't care about your baby. We don't care about none of your other issues. The fact that you just got out of jail, and we know damn well how we track y'all and how it's going to be hard for you to hold down the job. We don't give a damn about none of that. Pay this man who's already rich, a rich man. He don't even need the money. It ain't about the need. Reparations has never been about righting a wrong. Reparations has never been about the need of the victim. Reparations have always been about power and the ability to impose consequences if the demand is not met. What position are we in a position to defeat? And it don't even have to be military. I know y'all don't like to talk violence, even though we live in a nation that's saturated in blood. Every comfort that you enjoy in America, from the fuel for your car to drive your little personal car around the world, around the country, from your ability to fly to third world countries and sit on the beach and take selfies on Instagram talking about how you need your me time, and the only reason you're able to go to Jamaica and live like a king, the only reason you're able to go to the Caribbean or go to Africa and ball out is because of the oppression and imperial status of the United States and the Yankee dollar. The only reason. So everything about us is saturated in blood. Every comfort we have, the clothes we had manufactured in the third world, shoes we manufactured in a sweatshop, phones, The minerals, the rare earth phosphorus and stuff are mined by children in the third world. So everything we have is saturated in violence. It's a byproduct of violence. Even the home you live on, your condo or your personal house that you live on, was land stolen from Native Americans. But we don't like to talk about violence. We like to keep a sterilizing distance from violence that enriches our lives. We don't like to acknowledge that violence is cornerstone. But we are not in a position to defeat the United States, to engage in economic warfare, political warfare, psychological warfare, armed warfare. No battle arena, or have we organized ourselves or prepared ourselves to meet them, to defeat them. And then when we defeat them and then say, now that you have lost, in order to us to end aggressions, you have to make us whole. We're not in a position to do that on any front. We have been in a position, we have the potential to, but we don't carry it out. We don't execute it. And then we're not in a position to hold, and I'm just saying how reparations, I'm not talking about how it should work. Reparations, the way it should work, let's just get this out of the day. The way reparations should work is, you did wrong. And now it's time to do right. Now that you know you did wrong, you've acknowledged you've done it wrong. You've even, I think, didn't Bill Clinton apologize for slavery? Now it's time to do the right thing. I'm talking about the reality of reparations, not the morality, not because I believe that it's the moral thing to do. I think that black people should have reparations. I support reparations. But just because I support it don't mean I can't deal with the reality of it. I'm just talking about the cold, hard facts about reparations, the history and reality of reparations. And I always find this, even non-DOS pro-reparations people, when you start talking to black folks that are in the reparations movement, that have invested so much of their life and their energies in reparations, and you start to engage in critical analysis and talk, oh, what do you mean to tell me we don't deserve reparations? I never said that. I get that all the time. People say, we got to get reparations. I'm like, fine, let's get reparations. But there's certain rules to the game. There's certain things you got to do. There are markers. We can look at the people who have secured reparations and how has it played out for them. What are you talking about? The only thing they focus on is identifying the crimes, trying to get a good accounting of what is due us, and then making an appeal. That's what they do. That's the reparations movement. These are the crimes. This is the timeline in which the crimes were committed. These are the various institutions, private and public sector of the economy that have benefited from our enslavement. And then we go from everywhere to the U.S. government, all the way to the international justice bodies in The Hague, in Geneva, Switzerland. We go to the UN and make the appeal based on the evidence. Reparations has never worked that way. Has never worked that way. In fact, there are people who don't deserve reparations that get reparations, and people who deserve reparations that don't get reparations, because we're grown folks, so we know what's right ain't often what happens. What should happen is not always what does happen. The UN laid out basic principles and guidelines for the right and to remedy reparations for victims of gross violations of international human rights and laws, serious Assembly Resolution 60-174 on December 16th of December 2005. When this happened, I was a member of NBUF and a member of NCOBRA, or associated with NCOBRA. And when this resolution was put out, black folks was like, now, it is official. It is international law. The U.S. is a signatory to this treaty, and the U.S. will have to. Let me read that again. The basic principles and guidelines on the right to a remedy and reparations for victims of gross violations of international human rights laws and serious violations of international humanitarian law, adopted and proclaimed by the General Assembly Resolution 60-174 on December 16, 2005. And it defined what reparations for harm suffered. And it says right here, restitution, reparations, in Article 4, Section 19. Restitution should, whenever possible, restore the victim to the original situation before the gross violations of international human rights. They have to restore us to what were we before slavery. If you were fighting for slavery reparations, what were you before you were a slave? Were you an American citizen? Were you made white? Were you white? Were you balling out in the American economy? We were Africans. So in order for true reparations and restitutions to follow, we have to be restored back to Africa. Or at the very least, given the option to be able to return to Africa as full citizens of Africa. So the United States doesn't even have the capacity to do this. It would say true reparations according to the laws, the very people you're seeking reparations for, as they define reparations, we would have to be fully restored to what we were prior to the gross violations. That's not even the most important thing. Maybe y'all can work y'all way around and see how we can be full American citizens and get reparations. Because even white folks were like, yeah, your reparations is the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. You were given the full rights and equal protection under the law. You were given citizenship, and you're allowed to go participate in this economy. And we even say, well, we started at a deficit. And then we got to turn to these Irish and Polish and Italian immigrants. Well, I came here with nothing. So if you want slavery reparations, because then you have to look at the black codes and the Jim Crow laws and the redlining and all the crimes that were done long after slavery, which is going to up the ante and increase the bill even before that. So maybe you're just saying, look, that's not true reparations. If we are not restored to Africa and we are not full-on Africans, and in order to restore us to Africa, they have to restore Africa to its pre-colonial status. They have to restore Africa to what it was prior to European colonization, and then return Africans to Africa and make whole. Reparations is bigger than just getting a student loan or student loan forgiveness or getting enough money for a down payment on a fur coat or whatever y'all plan to do with that cash money. It's bigger than that. It's about restoring the victim to the original situation before the gross violations. So for true reparations, we have to be what we was. We have to be repaired. We have to be restored to who and what we were prior to slavery. And thus, because that means our homeland, and our homeland was also subjected to heinous international war crimes, you have to restore Africa to what it was. But this is a more important. Also, Section 4, what was it? What did I say? Part 4, Section 4, 23. I believe that's chapter 23 or point 23. For reparations for harm suffered. This is the most important aspect of reparations to me that I don't hear anybody freaking talking about. It says guarantee of non-repetition. Meaning that one of the key elements of reparations means that the people who are giving you reparations guarantees not to engage in the activities from which you are fining them for. Non-repetition, meaning that if you are seeking reparations for slavery, the people paying you for reparations have to give a guarantee that they will no longer engage in slavery, genocide, discrimination, racial discrimination, forced sterilization, redlining, racism. So in order to fully give us reparations, even after the check is cut, we would have to have assurances that all of the violations that have committed against black people that made us worthy of reparations will no longer be committed anymore. Does anybody buy that? Does anybody see where that's possible? I see it. And I think these are questions about reparations. And there's a serious reason why I'm going to these aspects, because I want black people to be liberated. Reparations or no, whether the white folks cut the check or not, I don't think that should be the be-all, end-all. It could be a factor. That's just, to me, that is not a viable or rational thing. whatsoever. But what we like to do is to compare ourselves. I want to talk about two more things before I go. I want to talk about the populations and the movements that have successfully secured reparations and how they overlap or they differ from black people who have yet to successfully secure our reparations. And I want to talk about other movements for black people's empowerment and liberation that succeeded. Because ultimately, I want to know, if we were to get reparations, how will it play out? Will we be better in the long haul for it? And the one way to look at that is look for other reforms and other compensations that black people have secured and see how those played out. But another thing I want to talk about, and just how sick and backwards this system is, as we talk about successful reparations. One of the populations that did receive reparations for slavery was the enslavers. And here's a list of the nations that got where they gave the slaveholders, the enslavers, reparations and made them whole for the loss of their slaves. So when the European, Spanish, UK, United States, the French, France, when all these nations abolished slavery, they said, well, these people's way of life, their income was based on slavery, and we're no longer allowing them to enslave these people. So they gave the slaveholders, the slave masters, compensation for the loss of property. That happened in Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, throughout the British Empire, Jamaica, throughout the British West Indies, even in Kenya and Ghana, Chile, Colombia, all the Danish colonies, the Netherlands, all of their colonies, Ecuador, all the French colonies, Haiti, the Haitian slave owners were compensated. Mexico and Central America, that's Panama and Paraguay, Peru, throughout the entire Spanish Empire. The Swedish holdings, they didn't really have a large, expansive empire, but there were Swedish citizens who were in other imperial states as absentee landlords and plantation owners. The Swedes were in Uruguay, Venezuela, and the United States. And we're going to talk specifically about the United States slaveholders. Remember, now, the slaveholders who rebelled, who left the Confederate States, they didn't get compensation because they were in open rebellion. But there were some that said, we're going to stay loyal, we're going to stay within the Union, and whatever the outcome, we'll respect it. So those slave owners were rewarded. Slaveholders in Washington, D.C. got $300 per slave, which is equivalent today, because of course I went and looked up what was $300 worth in the 1860s. That's equivalent to $6,000 per slave that white people got. Slave-owning white people got $6,000 per slave in reparations. So these are the people we want reparations from, with this kind of mentality. We want Urugu to make us whole. And I'm not questioning the worthiness, but I do want to look into the viability of it. Just because we're worthy of it, deserving of it, doesn't mean it's viable. But let's look at people, because that's what I always say. When I was working with the National Black United Front and in Cobra, I said to Samori, why don't we just study the people who got reparations? Why don't we look at their tactics, their stance? What position did they hold politically, militarily, historically? What tactics, strategies did they use? Why were they successful and we're still struggling? Nobody took me up on that. So I just do it my damn self. Of course, we all know at the top of the list, the Jews got Holocaust from Germany. And they say that it was estimated at the time that up till now, about $89 billion has been paid out to the Jews for reparations. Now, here's another thing we have to point out about the German Holocaust and World War II and the reparations. Jews killed over 6 million. The Germans killed over 6 million Jews. They killed over 20 million Slavs. Did the Slavs get reparations? What about the Polish? The Jews targeted gays. They targeted blacks. So when you have a population that people who have been wrong, who have wronged a nation that has wronged a myriad of people, but one specific people get the payout. But I might play this today or tomorrow, depending on the time, today or Friday. The Holocaust industry. We find out that many of the Jews who were survivors of the Holocaust didn't get a damn dime of the Holocaust reparations. Not a damn dime. Norman Finkelstein, who lost his whole family to the concentration camps, barely made it out. He wrote a book called The Holocaust Industry. And he found that a bunch of hustlers, shucksters, and con men are taking all this money and using it for their personal enrichment and not for making whole the victims of the Holocaust. Are we in danger of having that happen to us? Any black person that thinks that the Jews are a model, or the Germans are a model for reparations for black people, should read The Holocaust Industry. It's kind of a hard book to get. I had it and foolishly loaned it out. But the Jews got 89 billion, and we often look at that and we celebrate it. And we talk about the Jews got their, what about us? I think if so many people fall back on in the black reparations movement like to mention the money the Jews got, but they never really study it. They never really look at the allocation. Like, where's the money? Who's collecting those checks and whose name is on that check? And how's the money, the revenues disseminated to the masses of the Jews? And like I said, Norman Finkelstein, talk to him. And so they can't hit you with that anti-Semitic because, you know, you're going to read a Jew talking about Jews, so they can't hit you with that nonsense. But moving on. Which this is something that actually surprised me that I didn't know about in researching for today's show. South Africa. The apartheid state of South Africa had to pay reparations to the African majority victims. Did you know that? And all I read about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and I've been running around denouncing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for years. I hate Desmond Tutu. I hate his guts. I hate Mandela's guts. But they did get $85 billion in reparations from the apartheid government, and which was basically chopped up, which eventually, that was the projected sum. I believe those payments have stopped because of the corruption of the post-apartheid government. But the payout was $3,900 to 16,397 victims of crimes of the state. So it was a gross, inadequate payout. And I don't understand why you would need reparations for the people when the people took control of the apparatus of the state. But, you know, basically it's the people paying themselves at this point, but that's not how it paid out. But, you know, everybody who wrote on this subject, even the people who support the reparations, said that it was grossly inadequate. They say only about 16,000 out of millions of people were actually directly compensated, and most of the payout never happened. But it is on the books as one of the outcomes, one of the resolutions of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was that $85 billion in reparations should be paid out by the apartheid government, which is now the South African government, to the people. But we look at South Africa and the state, the poverty is more entrenched and dysfunction, and now the black government is now engaged in the same repressive suppression of the interest of the masses of the people in South Africa, and the black bourgeoisie has simply moved into the position as the colonial masters, or the neo-colonial masters in South Africa. I really know we don't want to repeat the crimes, but now where you have to have, after the revolution, you got a whole new revolution with the economic freedom fighters, and Malema has to fight a whole new revolution after you won the revolution 30 years ago. So you were voting against the revolution because it was betrayed, it was undermined. A bunch of bourgeois, Uncle Tom sellout Negroes took over the revolution, took over their head of state. Zuma sold us out. Mandela sold us out. So South Africa's still fighting. Reparations did not make South Africans whole. And now the U.S. Let's deal with reparations. The United States has paid out reparations. In 1938, a bunch of Japanese people were taken into custody, and took 120,000 Japanese people and put them in concentration camp or internment camps. And when they took them into camps, they forfeited their property, their homes, their businesses. They just made them forfeit it. And it was estimated that $9.5 billion, $9.5 billion freaking dollars was stolen from Japanese. Now, black people, over $1 trillion worth of wealth was stolen from us since slavery, not even counting. Over $1 trillion in land, labor, and resources have been stolen from black people since after we got free. What we lost in slavery, I would say it's incalculable. These people talking this 500 million, 50 billion, all these numbers, it's incalculable. But if we just go since the ratification of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment and black people were made whole citizens under the law, we've lost over trillions of dollars in wealth stolen from us. And we think we poor because we buy Jordans and iPhones and don't invest in the stock market. That's the source of our poverty. But anyway, the Japanese were given in 1988 by Ronald Reagan, gave an official apology and paid out an estimated $20,000 per household and to about 100,000 survivors of the Japanese internment. You know, and so that is what it is. But then many of the people who were on the list who have been compensated claim that they never got a check. They never got money, that the U.S. government had this big ceremony and there was this big apology and there was the signing of all these proclamations, but the checks were never sent. I don't know. So who you believe, Ronald Reagan and the U.S. government or Japanese victims of white racism? You have to take it. The Tuskegee, we all know about the Tuskegee syphilis experiment that was conducted between 1932 and 1972. If y'all need details about it, let me know. But the Tuskegee victims got $10 million. And that was about $178,000 to each person. And they said that was reparations because the state oversaw, the federal government and local health department oversaw that. So that was a state crime against the people. So they got reparations. Many of the people who received the reparation had died, so then they gave a secondary compensation to family members and survivors of $72,000 each. But any living survivors of the Tuskegee victims got $178,000. There was also Rosewood in 1932. The state of Florida, not the federal government, put up $3.36 million in 1994. But there were only 11 living victims. In 1994, there were only 11 living survivors of the Rosewood massacre. And so what they did was set up college funds for their offspring. So they would use that $3.3 million. They gave some compensation to the 11 living survivors. And then started to focus on the descendants, making the descendants whole. So those are cases of successful reparations. I'm running out of time, but I did want to kind of focus on what these various groups did in order to get, so let's try to overview this. Basically, in Tuskegee, it was exposed at a time where the United States was in the middle of the Cold War. And the United States wanted to demonstrate itself to be a humanitarian state. That it wanted to be identified as a humanitarian democracy. Because at that time, the colonial nations in Central America, South America, Africa, and Asia had the option. There were two superpowers at that time. You can go communist or you can go capitalist. And they started saying, remember that song, Keep on Rocking in the Free World? The West was still called the free world. The capitalist free market world was the free world. And then you had the Iron Curtain. So the United States went about, not only did they give black people civil rights, they went about trying to demonstrate to the world that this was a humane state. So it was a PR grab. It was a PR stunt. Same thing with the Florida and the Rosewood. Black people had started increasing in population, and we were in a position to hold account. It was regional. Now these are regional victories. They're not national victories. But regional victories can be stepping stones. Again, in 1998, remember I told y'all the Japanese were taking over the world, and the United States had several trade obligations. The Japanese were buying a lot of high-tech equipment from the United States. It was one of the largest purchaser of manufactured goods. So again, this was about international relations and about PR. It wasn't about because it was right or wrong. They locked these people up in 1938 and didn't pay them till 1988, 50 years later. So they didn't do it because it was right. They did it because they wanted something more out of it. Reparations is often an investment, more so than the right thing. Again, South Africa, they were trying to avert a real revolution. A revolution in South Africa was delayed, derailed. And they paid them Africans the reparations, not because it was the right thing to do, but because they had a machete at their throats. And the moment that the threat ended, the money dried up. Nobody knows where it went. Same thing. The Germans didn't pay out because they were good. They paid out because they had lost a war. The Germans were occupied on their eastern end by the brutal communists who were killing everybody. The communists had just lost 20 million people, had people starved to death. They were seeking vengeance. And then you had the Allied forces, the French that they had invaded, the British that they had bombed into the Stone Age, and the Americans who just, thrill killers. So the Germans were like, yes, I want to do the right thing. So again, they did the right thing at the point of a gun, not out of the goodness of their heart. And now I'm kind of rushing through this, and I apologize. Ain't enough time in either word. How did it work out? How do things play out for black folks? Now, there have been several things, because basically the point of reparations is not, we don't do what we're supposed to do, which is to restore ourselves to our pre-slavery condition. And we seem to be also overlooking Section 23, where we're supposed to have a guarantee of non-repetition, which means no more racism, no more discrimination, no more slavery, which means they had to rewrite the 13th Amendment and abolish slavery even in prison, and they have to release the mass incarceration. There's so much they have to do. They have to pretty much dismantle the apparatus of the state in order to make black people whole. But we're definitely trying to compromise and just seeking a payout. So how would the payout play out? So in order to really understand, when black people mobilize and organize for justice, to try to get something from the state, and we get it, does it improve our standing or reduce our standing? So let's look at some of the other favorable reforms or favorable concessions that black people got from the state. We got emancipation in 1863. Black people were emancipated. We were no longer slaves. And between 1864 and 1868, we got the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, which were specific constitutional amendments written specifically for descendants of slaves. And the descendants of slaves called themselves Africans. They still understood they were African people. And all of all the organizations and bodies that African people formed in the 1800s were African organizations, the African Lodge, the African Methodist Episcopal Church. We didn't see ourselves as slaves, even descendants of slaves. We saw ourselves as enslaved Africans. So it is a disrespect to our ancestors but I digress. But basically, the 13th Amendment ended slavery in all places except for prisons. The 14th Amendment gave us equal rights and equal protection under the law, and a bunch of flowery words. And the 15th Amendment guaranteed our right to vote. So those are major reforms. They're not cash, they're not a check. But those are major, monumental reforms for black people. How did it play? Between 1865 and 1866, they imposed the black codes. And what did the black codes do? They re-enslaved us. They took away our rights and protections under the law, and they suppressed our right to vote. So we got reforms from the people who enslaved us, but none of those reforms reduced their power. So when you get reforms, when you get reparations from people and you leave those people in power, so when we get reparations, do we leave white people in control of the economy? Do we leave them in control of the economic system? Do we leave them in control of the judicial system? And then when you're dealing with money, you're dealing often with civil law and contracts. So as soon as we got all this money in our pocket, we have to invest it. We have to bank it. Who regulates the banks? Who secures deposits? Who taxes the money? So we get reparations from oppressors, but the oppressors are still in power. So we got constitutional reforms. And remember, white people, you know how they get about their Constitution. They love the Constitution. And they buy guns, they Second Amendment rights to defend the Constitution. But when laws written in favor of black people are in the Constitution, they start to violate the Constitution. So when black people get economic justice, can we depend on white people to obey their own economic rules and regulations? And if not, how will we hold them accountable? How will we sanction them? And then a century later, we had the Civil Rights Act, which again, the Civil Rights Act in 1864 was written to give us all of the rights we secured in 1864. 1964, LBJ sat across from Martin Luther King, Abernathy, and all the big six civil rights leaders and said, here, niggas, here's all your rights back. We gave you 100 years ago. Have we been doing well since 1864? Since they ended slavery again? And remember the chain gangs? They did away with all that. So they re-enslaved us, sharecropping, that's supposed to be taken care of. They gave us equal rights and equal protection under the law, which means all legal segregation, all that colored only, Negroes in the back, colored water fountains, desegregated the schools in 1964. And then a full restoration of our right to vote. And they even send federal agents down into the South to make sure they stop with that poll tax and intimidating black voters. And look at the black utopia it is now. When you look at the social indicators, life expectancy, home ownership, savings, still decline. So we've gotten major reparations, not monetary reparations, but we've gotten legal reparations, we've gotten social and even cultural reparations. And even some of us got the 40 acres and a mule. Some black people, that was a thing. And they did start doing land allotments. But then they decided that it was better for black people, instead of trying to set up an agrarian economy, that we would enter the wage economy. So instead of giving black people's land, they would set up and try to do affirmative action. Don't you know? Affirmative action. Where's my notes on affirmative action? Oh, affirmative action started in 1865. Did you know that? Affirmative action pretty much ran up until 1865. And then, which means affirmative action is essentially set-asides, allotments, or preferences, or quotas for black people, to integrate black people into public and private sector. That started in 1865. And it ended in 2016 in a case called Fisher versus University of Texas, which basically put the first death knell into affirmative action, which we can get into it. But now there's another case at Harvard, basically for Harvard preferences for black, underprivileged, and black students. And now that's being challenged by Asians. So the Harvard anti-Asian bias is going to the Supreme Court. And now that they said that Kavanaugh got on the court, it's guaranteed that they will use this case to completely outlaw affirmative action. But, you know, we had affirmative action since 1865, and where did it get us? So I think that is something that is sobering, that black people should think, you know, will reparations, which is a repair, which is a reform, will it save us? How well have we handled awards and considerations and set-asides and allotments given to us by the state in the past? What made us vulnerable? Why weren't we able to use these other amendments and reforms to elevate ourselves? And I'm not saying this to discourage reparations. I'm saying we've already seen from the Jews to the South Africans how reparations was taken over. The reparations movement was taken over by corrupt elements of the community and squandered, just like Haiti got $4 billion in support from Venezuela. And not only did Haiti stab Venezuela in the back and join with Venezuela's enemies, Haiti also had the elites stole the money and didn't disseminate it and distribute it to the people. How are we set up for that? Or do we have a system for holding corrupt leaders accountable? Sharpton, Jesse, Farrakhan man? Are we in a position to even properly receive and properly manage reparations? And if you really believe in reparations, we need to prepare. These are the realities of reparations. Take it as you see it. Bro Diallo show. I really would like, and Monday I'm going to talk about self-reparations. While we wait, while we struggle, while we organize for the justified payout of reparations, what can we do today? And I'm going to play next week. I'm going to set aside time to play this Holocaust Industry, because the people, the ultimate reparation hustlers, the ultimate go-getters for reparations, the people who have received more monetary reparations than all other people combined, the Jews, let's see how they do with it. Because I'm about reparations, I'm about liberation, I'm about all that. But I'm about success. I don't want reparations to better integrate into the U.S. economy. I want reparations to liberate myself from the U.S. economy and all oppressive systems. Q4 Radio, please share, please subscribe to the page, my YouTube channel. Please share this. Share the audio, share this video, get the word out, help to support independent, progressive, pan-African analysis. And I will see y'all Friday morning. We're going to talk about self-reparations and some other things. We're going to listen to Poor Righteous Teachers, Pure Poverty. Stay tuned. Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio. All of my Patreons, your appreciation gifts are in the mail. Look for that in the mail. Post the pictures if you like. Hashtag Bro Diallo, if you will. And if you put the pictures up, you allow me to, I'll share the pictures on my page as well to, show that we are a community that is united and expanding. Q4 Radio, Bro Diallo Show. Oh God. Why you do me like that? That's the wrong song. We already heard that. This is Pure Poverty by Poor... No, it's not. Hear it. Now, this is Pure Poverty by Poor Righteous Teachers. Shout out to Wise Intelligence. Shout out. I see the good work you're doing with the Rap Snacks Foundation. You are a true role model for the people and me, myself. Classic track, Pure Poverty. What the hell? Did I? Uh-oh. Did I do that? Oh. Sorry. Here we go. Now you have my word. This is what I've been trying to play. All right. Q4 Radio, Bro Diallo Show.